The title of this workshop is Impact of Societal Change and the Future of University Continuing Education. I'm Pascal Paschoud, Executive Director of the Formation Continue UNIL-EPFL, which is a continuing education foundation of the University of Lausanne and EPFL in Lausanne, Switzerland. I'm also a member of the eucen steering committee. Before we start, I'd like to do just a quick poll. I'm based in Switzerland, as I said, and since yesterday, it's no longer compulsory to work from home, so we can, to some extent, go back to the office. I was wondering the situation here in the group. If I ask you, who is working from home today? Who is at home right now? If you can raise your hand, just to have an idea. Yeah, it looks like we still have majority of people working from home. It's interesting to see how it evolves. And we were hearing this morning that our university are really developing, a new policy in terms of hybrid work from home or from the office for the time after COVID-19. So we had a bad news yesterday, is that Professor Jane Moerman from the University of Huddersfield in the UK will unfortunately not be able to join us today for personal reasons. So we will have basically two presentations made by three presenters. We will start in a couple of minutes with Professor Mahsa Fischer and Professor Nicole Andruch from Heilbronn University of Applied Science in Germany, who will give a presentation entitled Train the Trainer Concept in Higher Education, Learning Through Coaching. They will be followed by Professor Pieter Morman from We Are Katapult, the Netherlands. I think we are all wondering and intrigued by this name, We Are Katapult. We will learn everything about it in a presentation entitled Public-Private Partnerships to Solve the Skill Problems. The skill problem. So we will start with a presentation by Mahsa Fischer and Nicole Andruch. So in a few words, I want to introduce the two speakers. Mahsa Fischer is a professor at Heilbronn University of Applied Science in Germany and a design thinking coach and trainer. Her background is computer science with a focus on human-computer interaction. She teaches the fields of computer science, software and mobile application development, and cloud computing in bachelor and master study program of business informatics. She has worked with SAP for about 8 years as a UX designer and product manager before getting back to academia a couple of years ago. And Professor Nicole Andruch has studied mathematics, computer science and philosophy, politics and economics in Bayreuth University in Stuttgart and Munich, respectively. She's interested in all kinds of processes that have to do with learning, software engineering, innovation. Nicole teaches at the University of Heilbronn. I think this is Mahsa Fischer starting. Yeah, okay, so yes, the floor is yours. I'll let you share your presentation and looking forward to hear it.
Thank you so much, Pascal, for the warm words and the introduction. Very welcome to our presentation today. As mentioned already, I'm Mahsa Fischer from University of Heilbronn, and I hope that soon you can see my screen. Let me see. So please let me know as soon as the screen.
We don't see it yet.
You don't see it yet. It might be that it takes a little bit of time. So let's
It's loading.
That's
now.
fine.
Yeah.
Ah, perfect. So now you should be able to see it full screen,
Perfect.
I hope.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, so welcome to our presentation today about the train the trainer concept that we have tried out. Today, two of us are here as speakers, myself and Nicole Androsch, and we would like to introduce our concept about train the trainer. So how does it continue? Basically, I will start with the challenge, what was the problem and the motivation of this topic. Then we will explain about our solution, basically the concept of train the trainer. And then we explain about 2 case studies that we have used in order to apply this concept. And at the end, we will share our results with you. We also have prepared a virtual board with Miro at the end to also have the opportunity to get your feedback. Maybe we can combine this with question and answer session at the end. So just to start with the topic, so the problem basically was that during this Corona pandemic time, the university started to have only online courses. This was since March 2020. And we noticed that for the students, especially the ones working on projects in the project-based courses, they needed much more intensive coaching. We noticed that this kind of traditional interaction among the students themselves is somehow missing during these online courses. And we also noticed that the students need a more intensive coaching while learning new topics, specifically when they are applying these topics on their case-based projects. On one hand, that was the problem, the coaching and the specifically also higher number of students, because a lot of students couldn't get to abroad semesters, they couldn't get a job as internship in a lot of companies. So the number of students were also very increasing in these courses, which were mostly project-based. This was one problem that we wanted to solve. On the other hand, we also wanted to try out how can we give more impulses and more opportunities to students of higher semesters to take more responsibility and also to apply the methods they have learned in a deeper level. So what our suggestion and the solution is what you can see in this screen, basically the train the trainer concept. How does it look like? On the left side, the level 1 is the normal courses that the students in earlier semesters have. So they learn on stage 1 to discover the subject, they learn the theory. Then in stage 2, they can apply this knowledge to specific projects, so they can learn a little bit deeper. What is more interesting, let's say, in this concept is the level 2, where the students in higher semesters, or maybe the master students, when they are very interested in this methodology that is used or the context of the course, they can apply for this train the trainer concept. What does they do? They have already finished the level 1, so they can help the students of early semesters by coaching a dedicated number of teams and help them during the time that they are working on their practical projects. This is one side of the case, and the other elements of this train the trainer concept is they have a kind of enablement sessions that they can talk with the coach lead, the person who is the lecturer, and we call it coach lead, to raise the questions and get tips and tricks. It also enables the trainer, or the ones we call them junior coaches, to reflect their work. It means that during the weekly coaching sessions, they can reflect on the problems they have, and they can get some solutions from the coach lead on one hand, but on the other hand, they can plan the future coaching sessions that is coming up. Last but not least, the element of this train the trainer session, which I find it the most interesting part, is the observation part. So the observation means, on one hand, the junior coach via shadowing would observe the coach lead, meanwhile she or he is teaching and coaching the students and learn a lot out of it. On the other hand, we do it the other way around. By silent observation, the junior coach, meanwhile he or she is coaching the students, will be observed by the lecturer and afterwards get feedback, what could be improved, what went well. So basically, this is the general concept of train the trainer, which we have used for 2 courses that we would like to introduce as use cases. The first use case was the one that I tried and would like to explain a little bit about it. It was during a course which is called Software Engineering and Mobile Systems, 3rd semester for the bachelor students in business informatics. Last semester, there were 90 students. So we had like 4 coaches, junior coaches, helping these teams. So these 90 people formed basically 16 teams. And the purpose of the course was that the students build a mobile application from the idea till the implementation. And this was one of the scenarios that we tried out, this train the trainer concept. Now I would like to hand in to my colleague Nicole, who is explaining the case study number 2.
Thank you, Mahsa. Okay, great. So I had a course in foundations of software engineering, and to teach software engineers design thinking might be a talk of its own. So we tried it out to use that train the trainer concept for our young software engineers in the first semester, and had some smaller teams and also a bit less students joining the course. And fortunately, the only goal here was to learn design thinking. So there was nothing more. Okay. But there was nothing that like in Mahsa's course, where they had a lot of other things also to do there. And they also had some project-based stuff to do. So they got some challenges, and from that challenge, they derived projects that they had to work on learning design thinking. So, and this is somehow the 2 studies somewhere near. So what we suggested is, okay, we both use design thinking in some kind of a certain or special lectures. We both had a lot of students and tried out those train the trainer concept. We also thought that especially those courses using such methodology or such innovative methodologies, which might be working out loud or also agile techniques, might be useful for such train the trainer concepts, for having more and experienced students to help the students to develop their project. So what we just want to share with you is first the experience of the students, and then of course we will tell you and show you some insights, some ideas we had. And for the experience of the students, we have provided a small video where we get some of those students as well as the tutors getting some insights and some experience. And we hope the videos could start. Mahsa, would you try?
Yes, so please check if the sound is also shown. I'm starting it.
What task have I been taken on is I coached the students through the design thinking process. I mainly answered questions and gave out tips They gave him a few tips so they could solve it themselves.
Yeah, so to me, working as a coach is not really about solving the team's problem, but rather about enabling and helping the team to solve their problem. So this is somehow the key principle that I try to keep in mind when I'm coaching. And this is also somehow the key learning from the whole context. So really to learn to relate and interact with these people.
It's really important for the students, I think, because they can talk with the tutor, and I think it's a little bit safer for them to talk with them to a tutor than to a professor. It's more like student to students. You're more like in one level, so it's easier to communicate. And
from a student perspective, the best thing about the design.
So maybe we can continue to the next slide. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Nicole.
Okay. So I really fell in love with Daniel, which was your tutor. So having such an idea of what is coaching all about, yeah. So this were our ideas to help the student coaches, the junior coaches, to get, of course, deeper insights into design thinking and like that, but also to learn and to grow on their coaching rules. And that's why I really like, I don't know whether you remember, I really like Daniel's ideas where he started to reflect, what is coaching all about? How could I motivate students? How can I bring them to think deeper? How, could I help them to be and stay motivated? And these were all questions they raised and where we help them to find an answer. And this is maybe when you have a look at deepening knowledge, yes, this is what we could reach with our concept. And we were really, really happy about those students with a lot of ideas, a lot of those junior coaches with a lot of ideas and inspiration. And it was great to see them grow, to see them really be happy to, on the one hand side, help the students, and on the other hand side, have such a somehow elaborated program in Train the Trainer. And let me stay on the elaborated part for a while. It took a lot of time for Mahsa as well as for me, and of course for the junior coaches. And this was one of our findings. Mahsa's coaches, as you have seen in the video, were all very motivated and was great. And they, okay, let us do that Train the Trainer concept and let us do more work and let us learn more. And I had some tutors who tell me, okay, we will help you yeah, we help the groups, and we will also help you with our design thinking lesson, but we don't want to have the trainer concept. So this was one of my findings, that every student or every tutor wants to be a junior coach and wants to have this train the trainer or wants to join the train the trainer program. This was a bit of pity because it was my students that have decided not to join the whole program. So but we, of course, I had some students that also joined, and it was great to work with them. So what we have done to get some information from the students, and especially Mahsa has done a very elaborated survey. You can find some questions of the survey and all the background of that survey in our paper. I've just added here some small picture to have a reference at our evaluation. And of course, we and as you can see here, I don't know whether you can see that, it's small. Students were very satisfied with that that program. As I think it was not Daniel, it was Marcel, yeah, who told us, yes, that the students can ask the coaches questions. They that they won't ask us. And so we were at the end really happy about that program, and you can find some more information on how the students answered to the challenge, to the program and the coaches in our paper. But it was also a lot of work for us in the beginning to set up the trainer concept. And we since now we have prepared some of the material, some of the ideas, we think, okay, we will do that once more, especially because besides the help with coaching the students that we get from the junior coaches, we also get feedback from the junior coaches when they observe us in our lectures. So we could improve our lectures. This was one nice side effect. We really appreciated in having that concept. So this is maybe some small insights in what we have learned in that program, in that train the trainer program. And I think we had one more video, Mahsa, where we can have a look at the idea that the students get from the and the junior coaches get from our train the trainer program.
As a junior coach, I trained my leadership skills, because as a good junior coach, you need all the qualities of a good leader. You need to have empathy. If someone comes to you and have a problem, you need to be the listener. And one of the most important things is that you need to be able to teach someone. And so I think all those skills are really important for us, and I will continue to work with them.
So I think flexibility and to be open are really key aspects and really important. But I don't think that it's really important to be perfectly prepared with really nice PowerPoint slides and also to be able to repeat all this basic stuff from the manuals. So of course it's great and it's the foundation, but I believe that for a coach it's also really important, and it's even more important to just think about your personal coaching style. So how you would like to transfer the knowledge to the person.
So to future students, I would say that don't hesitate to ask questions, because every single question, even if the question itself seems obvious, the coach, he or she may always help you, and there's simply no disadvantage.
So it wasn't really intended, but I think it's now great. So because Louise ended up with, don't hesitate to ask questions. And this is what we also ask you to do. We have provided, I don't know, Pascal, do we have the time now?
Yeah, we have time.
We have the time because we have provided a Miro board, and we hope a bit that you can join that board and perhaps just for
so we can join the board through the link in the chat.
Huh? Exactly. Yeah. And perhaps I will try to share my screen.
Okay, yeah.
So this is the Miro board, and I can see you're joining. Great. So what we want to know from you is perhaps you have some experience with similar concepts. So if you wish, you can just add it here. It would be very interesting for us to get some information on that, and perhaps we can later on have some more exchange on that. And also, if you think, okay, there are some ideas I really like, so you may add it here, or you have some ideas for improvement, or maybe you get some other ideas from just our our talk here. So you just, in my opinion, it's often the case that you hear something and then you get some other ideas and think it on your own, and then start to think more and get some more ideas. So maybe you want to add it here. You can, on the one hand side, use these post-its here and just put it in and double click and just write down. We prepared here some of those post-its, and you can also take others here when adding here on that sticky note button. Do you see that here? So you can just add here, choose one color, for example, pink, and add it here and just write down. So as far as I can see, some of you have already joined. Do you need any help to join the board? And yeah, as Pascal has mentioned in the chat, if you have any question, you can, of course, while others are writing down some information here, you may ask questions now. And perhaps I will stop here the sharing.
Okay, so the floor is open for questions after these very interesting presentations. Maybe I will start with a couple. Could you tell us a bit more about the trainer program, and also tell us if the junior coaches are getting credits or any type of reward for the work they do?
Sure, I can start, and Nicole, please add. So for the courses or this specific course for the from the last semester, it was working like this, that the junior coaches would sign a contract, a typical tutor contract with the university. And they could, in addition to a kind of tutor activity, they could get a kind of design thinking junior coach certificate, which was very interesting for them and was a huge motivation for them to join this course. But this is not the only possibility. So the other possibility I'm trying this semester is, since the interest of students in general for this certificate was high, I have, for instance, this semester students who are not gaining any grade for this, but are basically only doing this just to have this kind of training session and have the final certificate for this. What from my side I could say is that we are trying to establish this program in one of our master studies, so that the master students get 5 ECTS and act as a coach for bachelor students. But this is something that we are going to try next semester. This is something I could say from my side for business informatics, but Nicole can share more insights on software engineering.
It's nearly the same. The students get paid for their job as tutors. So for especially the coaching sessions with the students, they get paid in a standard student contract. But for their traineeship in our the trainer program, they don't get any kind of money or something like that, or any ECTS. So it is, Martha, you have created those certificates, and I also wrote down if they need some information for further employers or something, someone who might be interested, then I write down some information and they get some certificates. We had one more question in Miro. This is the question whether it makes sense to have it for smaller groups or adult students. Maybe I start, and Mahsa, if you want, because I just have one first idea is we had one how to say, one main impact on that concept, or in doing that concept, and this was that we had a lot of students, and that's why we need a lot of coaches, and so we had about, you have 9 and I had 6, something like this, a larger group of coaches. So if you only have 2 coaches, it might be that the trainer program is too time intensive for you, because we don't get any, I don't know, you too, yeah? We don't get any reward on that train-the-trainer concept. So it is just our free time where we do that, the training for the coaches. And that's why if you have a smaller group, you might probably do it on their own, or as we both think, just do it together with a colleague, so that you can have a lot of coaches with nearly the same training concept. But Mahsa, perhaps you will add something more.
Definitely. So one option we haven't, I haven't tried yet. I don't know, maybe Nicole has tried, is of course you put your course together with a course of other department. You enable students to work interdisciplinary on one project, and then you might have more people in total working as groups, and then that make more sense, because then you have at least a couple of coaches. The good thing about these junior coaches is that during the enablement session, they also help each other, and they also give each other tips and tricks, what they did in their coaching session, what went wrong. And this is, of course, a little bit pity if you say you only have 1 junior coach, or you only have 2 junior coaches, then you don't have that effect, but possible, it is possible, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And Pascal, you have added here a link. I don't know whether this is a same team academy as we know.
I think it is. I think it is. I think it's kind of a franchise in. But so maybe you can talk about it.
We had some kind of other lecture thought of, or perhaps a whole study on entrepreneurship. We're in contact with the team academy in Finland, I think, and there's one a German, I don't know, part of that. It's in Bremen or Bremerhaven, I'm not sure. I think Bremen, and this is more having a whole this concept, as far as I understood, the team academy concept is having a whole study and a whole lecture in just doing coachings with the students. What we have done, we had normal lectures here and added that coaching part with our junior coaches here. So it was slightly different, but of course a bit inspired by those ideas. Yeah.
It's basically, I think in Team Academy, they don't really have lectures anymore. It's all project-based with the help of coaches. So there is a question from Olesia. Maybe I give you the floor.
Are there any coaches who had some communicating this week? Mahsa,
I can start sharing, and you can add your experience. So this is one of the findings we had was that from the course, the first case study I was trying, I had a junior coach. He was a master student, and I had a junior coach. He was in the last semester of bachelor with a lot of experience in design thinking specifically. And I had like 2 coaches who were only 1 year, let's say, older than the students participating in that course. And you could really experience and see that there is a huge difference. The student of master studies, they have more experience, they had less problems sharing their own experience. Also the one that had a lot of experience with design thinking in general had less problems. And you could notice that this is not that easy like a normal tutor, that it's enough that the student is just one semester higher. So the younger ones, the less experienced ones, has more challenges with answering the questions of the students. So what they do is basically, at least my course was like this, that they always let me know, and I was joining the team and answering the questions. So we were using Cisco WebEx as for the communication as a chat. Each team had one chat room, and I was like on hold during the coaching session, and the junior coaches were writing to me, could you please come by for team 2? They have a question. And I was like running from one team to the other, and you see that these differences are there. So I also think that such kind of programs might be, in the beginning at least, more interesting to really provide for the students with more experience. But what I can also say is that the younger ones, they also gain a lot of experience that is very valuable for them. Of course, they have more challenges, and this is harder for them, but they are different people afterwards. This is something I could observe. Nicole, I don't know from your perspective.
No, I was just thank you, Alessio, for your question. Just last semester, we had any, how to say, human-specific troubles one can imagine. So students falling in love and having quarrels and all of those things. But I think it's standard and normal in our courses. But especially last semester, we had a lot of those things, although it was online. Yeah. And you have added here also on Miro here that you have experiences with similar your ideas like peer coaching, yeah, which is the coaching part of our concept, which we added with that educational part. But yeah, thank you for having that reference to Team Academy and also to peer coaching. Yeah, and also thank you for all the other your hints here. Yeah, so the idea of having someone who that you can ask is great. The students really enjoy that, and yeah, coaching as a learning method is also very interesting. Yeah, so also our junior coaches learned doing that coaching, not only the intended stuff, yeah, but also a lot of other future and soft skills.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. We may even have time after the second presentation if people have a question. Thank you so much for this presentation. Very inspiring, and congratulations for this innovative project. We're gonna now move to the second presentation by Pieter Moerman. I'm gonna start with a quick introduction. Pieter is a co-founder of the Katapult network, a network of more than 350 public-private partnerships in the Netherlands and increasingly in Europe. He manages several policy programs aimed to establish and upscale partnerships in vocational and higher education. He holds a PhD from the University of Amsterdam on public-private partnerships, problem solving and governance. Welcome, Pieter. Just to remind you, you have more time than I had said initially, as you are giving the last presentation of the workshop. So take your time.
Thank you very much. I'll speak very slowly. Just kidding. I prepared a presentation of the amount of time, so we'll see how we get through. Yeah, my name is Pieter Moerman. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm a professional in the work of public-private partnerships. I've been working for over 10 years now on partnerships and how to solve the skills problem, as I will tell a little bit further. Katapult is a network of these partnerships, specifically aimed at preventing partnerships to reinvent the wheel, and we help the Dutch government and recently also the European Commission with how to establish these kind of partnerships as to really make them able to help solve the skills problem in education of the existing workforce. So I will tell a little bit more about this, but this is Katapult. So it's a network, and also it helps governments, and we're very nicely between governments in the government execution and really the practice-based work. And my own role, I've been involved with this for now over 10 years, and also doing research on these partnerships. As you see in the slide on the left hand, you see the PhD research. Working on are these partnerships really able to contribute to lifelong learning within Europe? So that's me. Let's see if that works. So this really focuses on the skills gap and the training and retraining of future and existing employees. So in the network, there are a lot of vet schools, a lot of companies as well. In the Netherlands, only 15,000 companies, but also higher education institutions, more universities for applied science than regular universities. And all these schools are forming regional partnerships with relevant companies. As I said, over 15,000 companies are now involved. On average, a partnership has about 50 companies where they're really closely interacted, specifically on one theme, such as the transition to a renewable energy, healthcare, those broader themes that play and that companies are really struggling with how to educate their workforce. This, of course, has been pretty prominent also during COVID and post-COVID. You see this within the Netherlands if you look at the policy on training and retraining, and also on European level, on the European Commission, for example, in the Recovery Fund, and these kind of instruments that the focus is increasingly on how to get employees well equipped, but also, of course, future employees, so the students of today, to get them adapted towards new developments, and what is the role of schools here, but also what is the role of companies and NGOs in this. And perhaps a very important actor I did not mention yet are here the regional governments that are increasingly involved with regional economic policy, and are increasingly also looking at the problem of how do we educate the workforce, what are the roles of private education educators, public educators, and how can we form these kind of lifelong learning programs. So this is the theme. Katapult is now a network. You see here this map. Of course, this map is increasing also in Europe now. The Netherlands, of course, are a little bit more, but that's because I am from the Netherlands, of course. And because the Dutch partnerships have been risen since 2010, and the EU partnerships, there's just a recent tender of 400 million specifically focused on centers of vocational excellence. But again, these are open to vet schools, but also to universities that actually want to engage with their field and really go on lifelong learning programs in these stuff. I mentioned collaborative partnerships, and this is really important. This is also the basis of my work. Of course, their public-private partnerships are very common, but mostly public-private partnerships are contractual relationships. So a few companies ask, can you, university or school, can you help us with a lifelong learning program? We pay you a certain amount for this. You receive a course or whatever, and it's done. And of course, you also see this in research and in all the infrastructure and all different sectors. Collaborative partnerships are something different. The idea of collaborative partnerships is that you form a group with public and private partnerships. You set common goals. You define common activities. You see who is best fit to execute these activities, and you execute them from the idea that these are activities that you cannot be able to establish alone. So, for example, schools do not have the research facilities as some bigger companies do. Bigger companies do not have smaller companies do not have the knowledge that some researchers do. Students want to be educated very often in hybrid learning environments, so both on school and both in practice. Well, you need companies and NGOs to perform this practice-based education. So there's an advantage for all parties, the 1 and 1 in 3 idea. And this is the essence of collaborative partnerships in contrast to contractual partnerships. I've been doing research in the period 2012-2018, so the data collection from until 2018, on 48 partnerships via large-scale quantitative analysis. So what do they actually do, and is this successful? A couple of case studies and some in-depth interviews to see what they actually do. And what is interesting, these are the Dutch partnerships. What is interesting, I see it missing here, but I think I made an error in the presentation to save it correctly. Interesting here is that in 2012, the Dutch government decided to implement a few large-scale grants based on principles of network governance. And what did that mean in principle is there was a grant where partnerships could apply to. There was a co-funding requirement of 66%. So the companies really had to pay in, schools as well, regional governments as well, to say, this is what we're going to do. These are the goals. These are the activities. And there were almost all complete freedom in goals and activities. So what would they actually want to do? So the Dutch government did not say, okay, you have to do these kind of programs, or you have to focus on lifelong learning, or you have to focus on getting more tech students or STEM students towards your studies. They basically said, do whatever you want if it's contributing to closing the gap between the labor market and education. So, and this was for me an opportunity. I've been involved in these grants, a couple of grants, to help implement them as well. And this was also a very nice opportunity for me to also do this analysis. So what did you see in practice? I've got now 3 slides with the 3 tables. This is what they actually did. So on average, each partnership executed 17 activities roughly. And on left hand, you see the goals. And on the right hand, you see a couple of examples of activities. So they're roughly categorized in 5 themes. The first is all about, I call it the contribution to innovative capacity. So this was all about innovation, research and development, sharing knowledge. A couple of examples are the startups, research and development for companies, so innovation projects, but also much focus on collaborative meetings, so floor meetings where the newest technologies were presented, and representatives of all of these companies and teachers actually went to get new ideas, to exchange, and those kind of things. Of course, the idea of improving initial education, the update of the curriculum, teacher training, student teamwork, lifelong learning, of course, the theme of this conference as well. So customized courses for businesses, masterclasses, the retraining of unemployed personnel to get them into the companies. Activities that focused on the match between the labor market and education. So, for example, continuous learning route from secondary education towards vocational education. Also focus on increasing the number of students into certain areas. In the Netherlands, especially in STEM related topics, there is a high shortage of students. And a focus on joint production and research facilities. So sharing facilities between the school and companies, removing the walls between the school and the company, bringing state-of-the-art facilities within the school. So the 3D printers and these kind of things, so students could actually use it. And also use the facilities of businesses. And this last item is speaks to the imagination. You've got quite a few hubs in the Netherlands already where you have large buildings with a lot of equipment within it, where you see students and employees from companies actually together learning, innovating, and these kind of things, where these activities I mentioned before are taking place. If you actually now look at these activities, these were examples. If you look at the activities, you see that most focus in these years, so if you leave it to the partnerships themselves, focused on the improving of the initial education. So interestingly, in the goal setting procedures, you saw that schools and companies decided that improving initial education, hybrid learning forms, updating of curricula, these kind of things really got much attention. Second, the contribution in innovative strength, the matching of education to the labor market, lifelong learning only 10%, and production and research facilities. This is a difficult category because one activity can mean a whole building. So don't take that one too seriously, but the other activities you see a rough division between initial education on the one hand, nearly 50%, and other activities such as innovative strengths, match education to the labor market, and lifelong learning, a lot less. Especially lifelong learning here is interesting. And you see, I will tell a little bit more about the dynamics within these partnerships, how these results can be explained. Then, of course, how successful are they? Here you see, well, form your own opinion, I would say, in line with expectation right from the start. So an activity that was set out, being developed, and was directly a success in the sense that it went as they were hoped that it would went, 24% of the activities. In line with expectations, so satisfactory after 1 year. So they had trouble establishing it, they did not focus on it, another 16%. Nearly 20% of all activities and 19% just disappeared. So there was a nice plan, and you see a lot of window dressing here, of course, a nice plan making. The idea, but it never came to happen. Then 20%, 21% failed, was below expectation and disappeared. And another 20%, which I find interesting, was started after the initial plan, or was really radically changed. Dynamics of within the partnership really caused a new activity to arise, or some existing activities to be changed radically. So this was the quantitative results in here, and I will now go to the observations. So I skipped the part of the case studies also in case of time. You saw very interesting dynamics here. And a couple of things. I've really focused on, and you saw it in the beginning, on the problem solving capacity within partnerships. If you take a network approach, then you really need to have problem solving capacity within partnerships to be able to define goals, to be able to find activities, and to experiment and improve these. What you saw in the research and also from the case studies is there was active experimentation, bottom-up decision-making on goals and activities. And what really helped within this is, of course, the enormous co-funding requirement. Companies are not just going to dive in a partnership if they have to pay for it. So there was a lot of dynamics in this. What are we going to do? Second interesting part is that most of the partnerships I investigated are still existing. So they were continued even, well, we're now 4 years after most of the grants were discontinued. So they managed to hold each other and go on. But critically is that difficult activities that they found pretty hard and difficult to see, to envision, were very often terminated. And lifelong learning is one of these. Second part is the power relationships between partners. At first, there was joint goal setting and co-funding. But during their development, you saw a lot of goal displacement. And there was one very important reason why this occurred is partnerships existed of very small companies as well. There were a couple of big companies, but very small companies as well. And the education institution was very powerful. This powerful that they also attracted most of the project management towards them, which meant that they were very dominant in deciding what activities should take place, and also dominant in the execution. This also explains the 49% of initial education activities focused on improving initial education, which, if you really look at the company side, of course, there should be amount of this, but it's a lot. There's a lot of some goal displacement towards the goals of the education institution. So yes, there was active experimentation, but a very dominant, one very dominant partner, in this case often the education institution, also meant that some companies, I will come to the conclusion on this, did not recognize themselves anymore in the partnership and also terminated their relationship with the partnership. Finally, which is very interesting, and this is also this is a research by myself, but also a formal evaluation of 2 of these grants, is that there was a positive effect visible on the match between the labor market and education quantitatively. So students more often found a job, and employees were more often able to engage with their new working environment, for example, when new technologies came in. This evaluation was only done at VET level, so the vocational education training level, not on higher education. So yeah, this is very good to know. So, and you see it on the image, where companies and schools holding together in a fragile balance. Partnerships are able to engage in a large variety of activities, and there's a demand-driven effect. And you see activities that they alone would not have been able to achieve. And also they were, to some extent, able to reflect and adapt based on their progress. And you see this in practice. However, and this was also caused by the setup of the grant, which I'm not going into perhaps in the discussion. There were power relationships. The power relationship within the partnerships appeared to lean towards the education institution, leaning towards goal displacements, towards the primary goal of the education institution, and also the termination of activities that were perceived difficult. And especially for the longer term, and there's a lot of investment going into these partnerships, this causes concern for the involvement of smaller companies on the long term. Especially these smaller companies and their employees are very important in this skills gap, and how to approach this and how to involve these smaller companies within these programs is a challenge, as we find and as we're working on right now. So this is the story of the partnerships and the skills gap, and the presentation. Yes, this was the end, and I will stop sharing the presentation.
Thanks very much, Pieter. So we have time for questions, discussions. I don't see any question in the chat, so feel free to raise your hand or just talk. Maybe I'm gonna start. Pieter, I was wondering what it does involve for a company to take part. What is a type of commitment they make when they engage in one of those partnership?
There are a couple of different roles they can take. They can be we distinguished 4 different roles. I'm going to name 2 of them, which are most prominent. The first one is the one that takes services from a partnership. So this is, well, not the most interesting, but when it takes services, it would say, okay, I've got 40 employees that really need to be retrained. Can we do this together? Or I've got some innovation projects that I want to be working on. Can we do this together? So then it's actually a customer. The second part, second role is also the one of investing partner. When they say, okay, we're going to make an infrastructure project, shared facilities where we bring the school and a few companies together, and we invest in this location because we have a vision that students and employees should work together, innovate together, and research together. So these are two roles. Third role I can mention also as well is, and this is a role which is taken frequently, is the one of thinking along. So they think along on the curriculum, they are in advisory boards, these kind of roles. A less active role in a partnership. You can ask yourself the question, is this partnership or is this just an advisory role? But this is a role you also see companies take. And the amount when they want to invest usually progresses over the years. So at the start, they want to invest in they find it difficult to invest in cash, so with funding, but are more easily inclined to set personnel and share facilities and give guest lectures and these kind of things. During the years, when a partnership becomes successful, this changes, and the most successful partnerships have at least 60% of the cash funding from companies.
Thank you very much. I imagine we are all intrigued by the conclusion, which is that the educational institutions have become ever more dominant within the partnerships. Can you tell us a bit about this? It's quite, coming from a university, I'm quite intrigued by this one.
Yes, yeah, it's interesting dynamics. I don't know if I was surprised, but at least I found it a very prominent conclusion. These are true dynamics within a partnership during the years. The idea at the start is shared ownership. We're going to do this together. We're really going to make everyone happy in these kind of partnerships. But the setup, and this is also a government thing, that's also the governance thing, is that at least in the Netherlands, there's a tendency to award these funds towards the education institution and to stimulate these partnerships through the budget of education institutions. Also easy because of all state regulations on state funding and those kind of things. Unfair competitiveness, these are often very rules, but funding is directed through the universities and also vet institutions. And this does not have to be a problem. There are partnerships that prove that this is should not be a problem. But in practice, you see that often the project teams and the execution and also the plan making phase is done by staff members of these people that do take into account the needs of businesses, but there are often no project members of the companies in the project team. Where you see that these are actually involved, and it's a different dynamic. And this causes, in effect, the activities to goal displacement in this sense, activities to divert. So yeah, these are dynamics, and I would say negative dynamics, because both parties are equally important in these kind of partnerships. But it is a dynamic that is actually occurring.
Okay, very, very interesting. Mahsa, you have a question, I think.
Yes, thank you so much for your interesting talk. What I find interesting is how does this matching take place? How do these organizations find themselves in the beginning? Is there a process you're following?
Yeah, a very interesting question. Also a very important question, because the matching between partners is crucial for a successful partnership, of course. No, every partnership goes along on this on their own way. So in some cases, there's a existing portfolio of companies they earlier did research with, or students are involved in projects, and there's an account manager that just goes on and talks to a lot of people. And we also jokingly refer to as the cup of coffee that you drink with the companies and establish a mutual relationship is perhaps the most important discussion at the start. So no, there's no process or a way these partnerships do this. You can say a lot of this, of course, how this should be done or what are best practices on this. But in practice, you can say a lot of to these partnerships. You could approach it like this way, but everyone approaches it on their own way. There's a lot of personal opinions on this as well. A project manager of the partnership has their personal opinions on companies, so it calls companies from the sector A and not from sector B. But this is also a personal opinion very often. So less structured as well, I would sometimes hope.
Thank you so much. Another question would be, how long does this partnership take usually? What is the typical interval?
Yeah, the duration, well, the successful partners we know are now over 10 years old. So practically, well, they can last a long time if they're able to adapt. It takes, we did at the first few years, before a partnership became somewhat successful, it took at least 3 years. So there was 3 years of muddling through. We did manage to, sometimes even longer, we did manage to shorten that amount to roughly 1.5, 2 years before the first activities actually become successful, in the sense that partners say, hey, this is valuable, we really want to participate in this. And the key here was diversification. So if you have a partnership only focused on one specific thing, it can be very effective, but the problem is only a couple of companies are going to be interested in this. So it becomes very narrow. And when it goes wrong, personal relationships or whatever, the entire partnership blows up. And if you have a diverse portfolio, lifelong learning and some innovation projects and also student involvement, these kind of things, partnerships tend to last longer, especially when infrastructure is involved. So joint infrastructure really works to sustain partnerships, but also takes a longer time before partners are actually committed to invest in these partnerships.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
Who is next for a question? Peter, I was wondering, could you tell us a bit more about what is the exact role of We Are Katapult in this process of matching, project management, and so on? What exactly We Are Katapult do during the life of a partnership?
Yeah, the setup of Katapult is there are very few people that work at Katapult or something like that. The Katapult is really a network. So it joins mostly the project managers from these projects that are actively involved in these projects, that all face similar troubles. So they all have difficulty of involving their partners and how to do this. And there's always a board of a university that does not want to comply, or a company that fails. So everyone is struggling in these partnerships. It's new, it's difficult. And there's so much incentive of these project managers to learn, to find someone to help. So there's a very close network of at least 400 people that really help each other in this process. So we have groups that do peer reviews together with each other. So really help us how we're doing this. There are groups that are involved in funding. What are new funding options? How can we approach these funding options? There are groups that are focused specifically on activities. So a very popular one is hybrid learning environments, so where students go on into living labs of these kind of things. A group that really goes in depth of how do you organize this? Is there really a learning outcome? So it's a pretty active learning network that strives to make these partnerships actually work. And my role, and the role of my colleagues as well, we've got a couple of colleagues, Boudewijn Grievink as well, that was in the previous set. We're actively working to engage in these networks, so that these groups form themselves, that there's actually something taking place. And also our role is to help the Dutch government in this sense, to implement these grants that are interesting on these partnerships. And the national government ask us, the ministries ask us, help us in the process of when they are going to ask this grant, help these partnerships with forming the good partners, realizing good activities. So we kind of have an advisory role in those processes. So that's the network, and to be honest, it works really well. It's really bottom-up network, and people just come to us and say, we have a real big problem on funding. Well, we always know a couple of other people that are also struggling with this, and they are able to help each other and really strive along. And we believe that it's also one of the most important reasons why this year why it now only takes 2 years to develop into a successful partnership rather than 3 years, because there's lots of easy barriers you can remove at the start.
Thank you very much. That's very impressive, I think. Are there other questions or comments? I was wondering if someone among the participants has been involved in the same type of project, and would like to share something about it? Doesn't seem to be the case, huh?
No problem. I do find it also interesting in the Netherlands. You now see universities were not really all too active in these networks up until last year. Of course, they were involved in research networks, but not in lifelong learning networks. And you really see a shift now, roughly since last years, where universities actively make plans, make networks, and make activities to get involved in these kind of partnerships. And there's well, big fund in the Netherlands as well, het Groeifonds for the Dutch people, that where the universities together also applied for this type of grant, really to get funding to realize these kind of networks, also to get capacity to actually execute these networks, because it's a lot of work. And this is also one of the reasons I'm also here at this conference, because I do believe this is a very interesting opportunity for universities as well to engage, to help to solve this skills gap that is there.
Can you tell us, I mean, if any of the universities that are present here would like to take part or to be involved in this sort of project, what should they do? Can they contact you and your team, or?
Yeah, I guess that's the most easy way. Of course, I know the Dutch opportunities and European opportunities. I don't know all countries, of course, but if they're interested and want to build such a network, we can definitely help, at least for the first few steps. Yeah, we're doing this a lot, so yeah.
Okay, so now we all know that we can give you a ring in case.
Very welcome.
Any last question or comment? It doesn't seem to be the case. So as I said before, in the end, we had only 2 presentations this afternoon. Normally we should have had 3. So the good side was that we had plenty of time to listen and discuss those 2 great conferences, presentations. So I think we're gonna have a longer break than expected. And if I look at the planning, we are supposed to be back at 4 o'clock or 4:05 for the keynote speech by Professor Mirko Nordegraaf. So I think you can just stay in the Zoom room and wait for the next presentation. Thank you again very much to Mahsa, Nicole, and Pieter, and see you later.